Two teenagers on the road are driving. A boy, Max, and a girl, Laura. Laura points out to Max they are lost. Laura pulls out the map to find their location. They are going to a summer camp. As they are looking at the map, suddenly a mysterious figure appears in front of the car. To avoid hitting it, Max swerves the car into the woods. Luckily, they both survive without any injuries. Max goes to check on the car and realizes that it is damaged, so he decides to fix it. Laura sees a woman in the woods. She decides to go and look for the woman to find out whether she is hurt. In the woods she hears strange noises and the voice of a woman saying Silas. She is terrified and runs back to the car. Max tries to start the car but it is stuck. A police officer appears out of nowhere scaring them. They tell the officer what happened. The officer seems anxious. He then helps them unstuck their car. They tell the officer they are heading to Hackett's summer camp and ask for directions too. The officer says they are a night early and they won't be able to make it to the camp. He tells them to go to Harbinger Motel instead and spend the night. The officer shows Laura the location of the motel. Laura tricks the officer into showing her the location of the camp too. The officer leaves. They instead decide to continue to the camp because they have no money to pay for the motel. They arrive at the camp. They find no one there. Laura decides to look around as Max waits in the car. She finds a bunker and sees someone inside. She calls Max to bring tools to open the bunker to save the person. They open the bunker and enter. Max sits at the stairs as Laura searches the bunker. She finds a big collar with the name Ian. She also finds remains of a dead animal. Max feels tired and tells Laura they should go to the motel. Suddenly Max is attacked by a mysterious creature. Laura tries to help Max but Max is pulled back into the bunker. She is put to sleep by the officer who approaches her from the back unnoticed. The officer is angry that they disobeyed his instructions. After 2 months. Summer camp has ended, the kids leave as the counselors are still preparing to leave. Jacob is sad that Emma broke up with him and wants to spend more time with her. He asks Caitlin hypothetically how he could break the van so that they could spend another night at the camp. Caitlin says he can either break the fuel line or remove the rotor arm. Jacob mindlessly decides to steal the rotor arm. Meanwhile, Emma and Abby break into their room to pick their bags. While heading to the camp's entrance where everyone is, Abby confesses her feelings for Nick and Emma says her and Jacob were just a summer fling, and they will be going to different schools that are far from each other. On their way they notice smoke coming from the cabin across the camp. They continue on their way and arrive at the camp's entrance where everyone is. Nick helps Abby to carry her bags, which makes Abby blush. Ryan, who has been listening to a podcast about the place, tells them about the Hag of Hackett's Quarry, which is a kids' campfire story about an old woman who died in a fire a few years ago. She haunts the woods looking for her lost baby boy. If she catches you alone, she tries to turn you into her son. Jacob dismisses it. Mr. Hackett, Mr. H, comes to check on them if they are ready to leave. Caitlin asks him for the van keys, which seems to have left in his office. He heads back to his office and asks Ryan to go with him. Ryan is Mr. H's favorite counselor. In the office, Mr. H receives a call which seems very important and asks Ryan to step out a bit. Ryan decides to listen to a podcast as he waits outside. As he is looking for the keys, he seems anxious and distracted. Ryan asks him why. He answers that he wants them gone before the sun goes down. He then finds the keys. On trying to leave, the van won't start. Mr. H is nervous and anxious. Everyone seems to be fine with staying. Mr. H leaves in a hurry and instructs Ryan to keep everyone inside during the night. After Mr. H leaves, Dylan brings up an idea to party the night which Ryan disagrees with, but everyone agrees. At the same moment we see two strange men, one watching the group through a rifle who later smears himself with blood in the face, another covered in blood planting a poster that says hunting season. Emma and Jacob break into the store to pick supplies for the party. Emma finds a gun and fireworks. Ryan lets Dylan to charge his phone in Mr. H's office. Dylan starts to look around the office as his phone charges. They discover a trap door to the basement in Mr. H's office. Dylan climbs down, but he is spooked out by the basement, so he decides to climb back up. He also discovers a secret room through Mr. H's closet. The room has monitors showing footage from cameras placed around the camp. Ryan tells Dylan it's nothing to worry about. Dylan's phone is charged, so they leave to go to the party. During the party, they play Truth and Dare. Emma ends up kissing Nick to make Jacob jealous, pissing off Abby, who has feelings for him. She decides to leave. Jacob is also pissed at Nick for kissing Emma. He also leaves. Nick goes looking for Abby. Emma also goes looking for Jacob. While Abby is walking in the woods, she starts to hear whispers. She then hears Nick calling her. Nick finds her. Nick and Abby talk about what just happened. Abby kisses Nick. Then suddenly they hear something growling. They decide to look for it. A strange creature appears. As they try to run, Nick is attacked by the creature. Abby tries to help Nick. Abby is also attacked. The creature is shot out of nowhere, saving Abby. In the next scene, Emma talks to Jacob. Jacob feels better. They decide to swim. Jacob hears Abby scream at the same time he loses the rotor arm. Jacob runs to save Abby, leaving Emma alone swimming in the lake. At the fire pit, they hear the scream too. Caitlin and Ryan decide to go. They meet Abby running from the woods. Abby tells them to go save Nick. Caitlin gives Ryan the gun and tells him to go and find Nick. Ryan runs into the woods and finds a man dragging Nick. Nick bites his finger. The man shoots off his finger. The man leaves. Ryan helps Nick to go back to the camp. Jacob is also in the woods looking for Abby. He falls into a trap. The same man that was dragging Nick saves him from the trap. He then pours blood onto Jacob's face and says it's for his own good. He leaves. Jacob runs. Ryan and Nick arrive at the camp. Caitlin asks Abby to draw the thing that attacked her since she is an artist. Dylan notices black stuff coming out of Nick's wound. He thinks it is an infection and tells Ryan to amputate Nick's leg. Then suddenly they hear something moving in the bushes. It's Jacob, half naked with his face covered in blood. Jacob has to go back to Emma, who he left alone at the lake. He tries to take the gun from Ryan to go with it. Ryan refuses since they need it too for protection. Jacob then leaves. Meanwhile, Emma is vlogging. She decides to go to the treehouse. When she enters the treehouse, she hears something moving above the trap door. She opens it and a creature falls down. The creature tries to attack her, but she defends herself by tasing it. She also takes a picture of the creature. She then runs and the creature goes after her. She manages to escape from the creature by hiding above the trap door. At the camp, Nick is transported to the camp's lodge using a wheelbarrow. Nick says he is feeling very hungry. Caitlin and Abby take Nick to the nurse's station to treat him, while Ryan and Dylan go to Mr. Hackett's office to use his landline. Ryan dials 911, but the call is cut off. Then suddenly power goes off. Dylan gets another gun from Mr. H's office. Ryan convinces him to give it to Caitlin, which he later accepts. At the top of the treehouse, Emma sees a zip line. She reels slowly to not make noise to alert the creature. She jumps onto the zip line, escaping from the creature. In the nurse's station, they hear footsteps above the room. Caitlin goes to see what's there. Caitlin sees a man. He is the same man we saw in the woods. Caitlin is able to hide from him. She follows the man. The man enters a room. Caitlin hears a voice on the phone telling the man to blood them. The man sees Caitlin and takes the gun away from her. She runs back to Nick and Abby and tells them to hide. Dylan and Ryan head to the radio hut in order to find a radio that they can use to find help. They find a trap placed in the camp's compound, wondering why it is there or who placed it and why. They also find claw marks on one of the cabins. In the radio hut, Dylan uses an old radio to call for help. As they wait for a response, Ryan sees a creature outside. On the radio, they hear strange people talking about them and looking for them. Dylan panics. When he opens the door to go outside, he sees the creature that Ryan saw. The creature climbs on top of the cabin. At the same moment, Caitlin, Nick and Abby are outside coming towards the radio hut. Ryan uses the PA to tell them to hide into one of the cabins. Dylan comes up with a plan to play a high-pitched sound from the radio to scare it away. They agree to do it. The creature pulls the wire. Dylan climbs to pull the wire back. The creature grabs his hand and bites him. Dylan is in pain. He tells Ryan to cut off his hand to prevent the infection from spreading. Ryan agrees and shoots off Dylan's hand with the shotgun. Dylan tells Ryan to get the wire and press the button playing the high-pitched sound. The creature runs away. They regroup again. Suddenly they hear a gunshot and see a woman with a gun running. They follow her and find a dead body in the swimming pool. Meanwhile, Jacob finds Emma. While talking, they hear the creature growling. They run. The creature blocks the way. Jacob dodges the creature's claws and ends up knocking Emma, who falls over. Jacob is too afraid and continues running. Jacob accidentally runs into another trap. He tries to free himself but fails. One of the hunters finds him and knocks him out with a gun. At the pool, Nick suddenly becomes aggressive with Abby squeezing her tightly. Abby pushes Nick into the pool. Nick struggles in water like a cat that hates water. Caitlin helps him. Nick is feeling cold, so they go to the pool house. Nick becomes aggressive again and throws Abby with great force. Abby gets a gun and shoots him. Nick transforms into the creature they have been running from. Emma is at the fire pit looking for everyone. She finds the hunters in the woods. She hides from them. They have captured one of the creatures. They kill it. They then hear Emma. Emma escapes from them and throws a firecracker at them. She reaches the camp and finds no one. She then hides in the van. At the pool house, they suddenly hear a person knocking. She introduces herself and they realize it's Laura, who was another counselor that didn't show up. They let her in. Laura tells them what happened to her. She was lying in a prison cell almost unconscious. She sees Max's body being dragged by the officer. The officer stops to tell her that it's going to be messy. Blood splashes on the wall from the cell where Max has been placed. The next day the cop interrogates Laura. Laura realizes that he is the sheriff of North Kill from his badge. He then takes her back to her cell. Max in the other cell suddenly seems to be fine without any scratch. He doesn't know what happened. The sheriff returns and gives Max clothes and tells him to get dressed. He then takes Max for interrogation and later returns him to his cell. Max and Laura try to figure out what's happening. Max thinks he might be a werewolf, and when there is a full moon, he turns into one. Later that night the cop forces Max to take off his clothes. Max disobeys the cop. He then cuffs Laura to a radiator facing Max. He gets a call and tells Laura not to get to clothes and leaves. Max is acting strange. Laura, who is concerned about Max, moves close. Max transforms into a creature just like Nick and attacks Laura, damaging her eye. She runs to look for help. She finds a first aid kit, treats herself, and ties a bandage around her damaged eye. She then looks around the police station and finds the syringe that the officer used to make her unconscious earlier. She finds a calendar marked July 7th, Beer birthday, figuring out the password to the sheriff's computer. On the computer, she listens to the podcast Ryan was listening to about the Hag of Hackett's Quarry. Suddenly the computer screen glitches. She goes back to her cell and hides the syringe. She then goes to sleep only to be woken up by the sheriff, whose face is covered in blood just like the hunters. He searches her and finds nothing. He gives Max, who is normal now, an iPad to see footage of what happened earlier. He then brings a chair to have a chat with Laura. He hands Laura a note to answer her questions about werewolves. In summary, Max is a werewolf and transforms at the full moon. Plus, to cure Max she has to kill the werewolf that bit him using silver bullets. The cop tells Laura that he will need her help to kill the werewolf since she is studying to become an animal doctor. He gets the iPad from Max and leaves. The next day she hears Mr. Hackett talk to the sheriff about the counselors that didn't show up. She figures out that Mr. Hackett is the sheriff's brother and also he was the werewolf that bit Max, which is why the sheriff didn't kill it when it bit Max. So they come up with a plan to escape and kill Mr. Hackett to cure Max. Laura pretends to be sick and stabs the cop with a syringe, sending him to sleep. She grabs his gun and keys. She locks him in the cell and lets Max out. On their way out, they hear a voice coming from a room telling them to kill everyone. In the room, they find no one there but find shotgun shells filled with silver. They take them and leave. Back to the present, Laura says that she left Max on the island across from the camp where Emma and Jacob were, and she came to kill Mr. Hackett. At the pool where she was seen running, she killed a werewolf hoping it's Mr. Hackett. She went back to the island to check whether Max had been cured but wasn't. He attacked her and bit her. Ryan realizes that the werewolf she killed was Mr. Hackett's daughter, making him angry. As she shows the bite on her arm, Ryan grabs her gun. Meanwhile, Jacob, who was captured by the hunters, is placed in a cage. In the other cage, there is a werewolf. Ryan agrees to help Laura find Mr. Hackett in hopes of convincing her to change her mind about killing him. They reach the Hackett's house. As they move around trying to find a way in, they fall into a quarry. Laura, who is transforming slowly into a werewolf since she was bitten by Max, can see with both eyes now. Emma is rejoined with the group when she is found in the minivan. Caitlin and Dylan decide to go to the scrapyard to find a rotor arm to fix the van, while Emma and Abby stay at the camp and hide in the storm shelter. Ryan and Laura make it to Hackett's basement through the quarry below, while the cop is talking to his mom upstairs. In the basement, they find Jacob. Ryan saves him and tells him to pass through the mine and find the others. Upstairs, the cop, who is Travis Hackett and Mr. Hackett's brother, is scolded by his mother for not protecting Kaylee, Mr. Hackett's daughter that was killed by Laura. Laura can hear what they are saying, but she is discovered and captured as Ryan runs to hide. Laura gets into a fight with the Hackett's mother, ending up shooting her. The rest of the family walks in together with Ryan, who has also been captured. They decide to hunt down Laura and stab Ryan. She is found and shot, but she can't die because of her werewolf healing power. Using her werewolf strength, she overpowers him and snaps his neck. Ryan is found and survives by stabbing Bobby using the same knife he stabbed him with. Laura then bites Ryan to turn him into a werewolf to heal his wounds, saving his life. Caitlin and Dylan arrive at the scrapyard. Caitlin identifies the suitable car to have a rotor arm and tells Dylan to tow it down. Dylan sees a werewolf coming and tells Caitlin to hide. She hides in the car and Dylan tows the car up. The werewolf jumps onto the car trying to attack Caitlin. Dylan sounds the horn to divert the werewolf as Caitlin jumps out of the car. The werewolf jumps on the crane to attack Dylan. He scares it off with fire. It lands on the ground and tries to attack Caitlin. Dylan drops the car, crashing the werewolf and saving Caitlin. As for Emma and Abby, Abby discovers a ladder in the storm shelter that leads to Mr. H's office, which they climb. Ryan and Laura finally find Mr. Hackett as a werewolf chained. It tries to attack them, breaking the chains, but ends up falling to the room below. In the room below, the cop walks in as Laura transforms into a werewolf and attacks him. Ryan picks up the gun at the same moment Mr. Hackett, the werewolf, rips his brother Bobby apart. Ryan shoots it, turning Laura and everybody that was bitten by it to normal, but it is not yet over until they have killed the giant white wolf that the Hackett family has been hunting for years. It's the same werewolf Laura and Max almost hit when they were heading to camp, so they decide to go and find him. So who is the giant white wolf? The giant white wolf is Silas, a son to a lady named Eliza, or in other words, the hag of Hackett's Quarry. She came to her son only to find everything in flames. She ran a show called the Harem Scarum about Silas the dog boy. She claims the Hacketts let the werewolf out by burning up her show, therefore, setting a curse upon themselves. She is the voice Laura has been hearing. She wants all of the Hackett's family dead. Meanwhile, Max is healed now and heads out to find Laura. Caitlin and Dylan head back to camp to hide. Emma and Abby are in the surveillance room in Mr. H's office. The same werewolf from the scrappy yard follows them. Abby has silver shells she found from the storm shelter. She slides them to Caitlin. Caitlin then shoots the werewolf, saving everyone. Jacob sits in the woods regretting what he did. Ryan, Laura and the cop are on their way to find the giant white wolf to end everything. They are suddenly attacked by a werewolf which jumps on top of the car. Ryan, who has the gun, has passed out. They apply sharp brakes, throwing it off the car. They then drive over it to kill it but don't see its body. So they head into the woods to find it. They end up where Laura and Max crashed. The old woman Laura was hearing was saying Silas all the time. The cop tells them what happened. Kaylee, Mr. Hackett's daughter, wanted to free Silas. She told her brother Caleb to start a fire as a distraction. The fire spread fast, burning everything. Silas was freed, but Caleb got bit in the process. Caleb then bites Kaylee and Mr. Hackett, who was trying to protect them. And that's how it all started. They find the werewolf. It's the scene where it all started. Laura shoots it, thus healing everybody. The end.